Welcome back to Garden Talk, brought to you by the Penn State Erie County Extension Master Gardeners. And again today, I'm your co-host, Mike Bailey, along with Ellen DePlacido. Good morning, Ellen.
Hi, Mike.
Hey, last time
I'm
around,
here.
you're here. Well, that's wonderful. I'm glad you're here. Hey, last time around, we were going to talk about raised beds and container gardens, and I just talked too long, didn't I? That's what you told me. Admit it.
Took off.
Yeah, I just took off and I just blabbered forever. Okay, we never got to container gardens, so we said we would, in today's show we would talk about the container gardens, and I'm going to let Ellen, pick up the ball on the container gardens, and we laughed.
Can
before.
I say something about raised beds?
Well, absolutely, please, Ellen, do that.
Okay.
Ellen's going to say something about
right.
raised beds. Everybody, thank you.
I would just like to add one more pro to a raised bed, and I don't think you said this, Mike. You might have, but there's really less damage with the raised beds, partly because people are not going to step up into the raised bed and compact the soil.
Good point.
When we have a traditional garden, unfortunately, sometimes we like to walk through the plants, whereas in raised beds, we don't do that. So that was one little thing I wanted to add.
Well, that's wonderful. That's a very important thing. Okay? Those of you who are used to listening to us, we banter around like this all the time. You should see us at the garden, okay, fighting about things, okay? But what about container gardens, Ellen?
Okay, well, container gardening is a little bit like your raised beds. It can be just about anything you want it to be. However, the most important issue or important issues to think about are your size of your container. Does it have drainage and the depth of the soil? Now, size is probably maybe one of the biggest mistakes, or like Mike says, the smallest mistake that a grower might make, in that if you choose a container that's too small based on what you're planting, your roots may become, or your plants may become root bound, and the soil has a tendency to dry out quite quickly in a container. So roots need room to support healthy plants, and if they don't have room to spread out, they become root bound, and your plant will not survive. We've talked about that with tree planting also. And then your soil. The soil has to be light, and it's so that the roots can grow and that it will not become soggy from the water that you put into the planter. So don't use garden soil by itself in a container, because that's going to harden and your plants are going to struggle. And probably the best thing is to buy commercial potting soil. And one thing I want to add is that if you have a very large container and you want to use that because it's attractive, depending on where you're going to place it, remember you might not have to fill that whole container with your good potting soil. You could even, on the bottom of that container, you might want to add some of your plastic water bottles or pop cans or small rocks or something, and then complete filling up that container with your good soil. Just make sure that water can drain through whatever you put in the bottom of your container. What do you think about that, Mike?
Well, that's pretty good. And I did pretty good about not interrupting because I put a jelly bean in my mouth.
Now you're okay, but now you're going to add, right?
Well, of
add
course.
Or detract.
Okay, no. The part that you said about the size of the container is so very, very important. I remember once I was over at my sister's house, and she says, "What's wrong with this plant?" I go, "Well, big plant, small pot, hot sun." That was it. Bang. Mm-hmm. That was all it was about. Okay, some people buy plants at the nursery and they leave them in the container that the plant came in when it was at the nursery. No, you have to take those out of those containers and you have to put them something in larger, and you have to give the roots, like you said, Ellen, you have to give them room to move out and reach out for nutrients and moisture and oxygen and stuff like that. So very, very important. In that good soil that you mentioned that you can put into on the top part of a large pot, it needs probably to be about 8 inches deep, and so that you get so that the roots do have room to expand through that area.
Okay.
So now, Were you going to say
Go ahead.
something?
You want me to talk about why it's a good idea to do some container gardening?
Yeah,
for
do
certain
that.
cases?
Do that. I know you have an opinion about
Okay.
that.
Yeah. It allows people who really don't have the space to have a garden,
Mm-hmm.
like raised beds or even a traditional garden, to be able to plant something. Like maybe you live in an apartment building or you just don't have any property and you might only have a patio. So you could plant a few vegetables if that's what you want to plant and put them in containers and put them on a deck or a patio or in front of a window even in your home. And the one thing is that you can move those containers around so that you can use them in different seasons. And you can move them around when you need more sunshine. If you're planting tomatoes and they need a lot of sun, you can move those containers wherever the sun is the most intense. And of course, they're easier for pest control. It's unlikely that, well, depending on where you have them, you could have some problems with your deer and things like that, but it's easier to control the pests with your container gardens.
But the container gardeners do require some day-to-day care almost
They
because
do.
they
Yeah.
will dry out quicker than something directly in the ground, whether it be raised bed or standards. So you do have to pay attention to that. If you're planning on going off for a week, okay, you got to find somebody to come around and probably put some moisture into those plants.
Right.
And you can't rely upon the rain all the time because one of the things that people don't seem to understand is that all that plant material in that pot kind of acts like an umbrella when it rains, and all that water has a tendency to drain off to the side, and it doesn't have an opportunity to sink very much into the pot itself. So kind of keep that in mind. Winter care, okay, what I do with my large pots, because I don't like to move them or bring them inside or take them in the basement, they're too heavy. I tip them on their side. So that they don't fill up with water, and so it doesn't freeze and split the pot, crack them and stuff like that. So I think container gardens is really a nice way to add some really good accent to a vegetable garden, your patio, your flower garden, or whatever. You can put different things in there, and they have some really nice, attractive, containers out there in the stores that aren't that expensive anymore because they're not made out of ceramic. They're made out of some kind of a foam artificial material that holds up pretty good. Ellen, any last comments before we sign off?
No, I was thinking, could we have like container boxes, maybe even two, right? Just little container boxes that we might sit on a patio?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we've used our time for today. So thank you for listening and hope that you're here next time. Thank you now. Bye-bye.